Hello, my name is Dallas Nevins, and I want to thank you for choosing to watch this recorded mini demo of a piece of the TalentQuest software suite. My colleague, Jon Naphin, Vice President here at TalentQuest, will be providing a brief overview of our 360-degree feedback surveys.
Thank you, Dallas. As you may be familiar, 360-degree feedback surveys are a tool commonly used for a leader to gain multiple perspectives on his or her key performance in a number of different areas. The number of different areas is usually defined by a competency model that the organization has identified that represents the skills and behaviors that they would like to see of their leaders. The leader, who is the subject of the 360, receives feedback from a number of different parties on their behavior, and it's in those ratings and the difference in those ratings between different groups that the learning comes from, and it helps direct their developmental activities going forward. I thought it'd be worthwhile to start by showing the end product. This is an excerpt from a completed 360-degree feedback survey, and you see that this individual who's being rated has received ratings from their direct manager, a group of direct reports, a group of peers, and also they provide self-appraisal. And the TalentQuest 360-degree report can be configured to meet the organization's specific requirements, but typically it's a 1 to 5 scale that has a behavioral-based descriptor, so needs substantial improvement to outstanding, or else a frequency-based scale, something like ranging from rarely to frequently or always. So the report can be configured in a number of different ways to show, as this shows, overall rating by respondent group. And if we scroll down, then we get to a level of detail below that where here are the different competencies that are being rated, and then how are the competency ratings differentiated. And we can go further and further to different levels of granularity. So beneath these competencies are behaviors, and we can see the ratings by behavior. Beneath the behaviors, we can see how each rater group differentiated their ratings. So suffice it to say that the TalentQuest report is highly configurable to provide a level of detail and data slicing and dicing to meet the organization's requirements. Now, this information that's represented in the report is collected through the TalentQuest 360-degree feedback module. And so what I'd like to do for the balance of the demonstration is show you what it's like to interact with that. The 360-degree feedback is one of the several modules that are part of the TalentQuest Talent Management Suite. You see here on the screen, I'm logged in as a supervisor named James Anderson. We see in the upper right-hand corner. And James has got 3 tasks to perform, and all 3 of them are related to 360 feedback. And so we'll look at each of them individually. So first of all, when an individual is selected to be the recipient of a 360 feedback, they are first given the opportunity to select raters. And with the TalentQuest system, the entire database of employees from within the organization can be uploaded into the system to make it very easy for employees to select their raters. And so we see on James's home page, he has a select raters task, and if I see highlighted James's name as a hyperlink, as I select that, we are going to see the select raters or nominate raters interface. And it's very simple. We see that some raters have been pre-selected, and actually by default, since the system maintains the employee database, and within that database the relationship, so James's manager, and in this James's manager would have been identified, and James's subordinates would also have been identified within the database. So those individuals as raters would be pre-populated, and then James has the opportunity to go in and select additional people like peers and also externals. So if he wanted to select another employee as one of his raters, he would select the Add Employee Rater database, or the Add Employee Raters button, and the system asks that you provide enough information to identify one or more people. So I'm going to try and see if there's anybody in this system named Edward. And sure enough, there are several. So I can say it's actually Edward Lynch from our Atlanta office that I want to rate me, and I want him to rate me as a peer. And we'll see that Edward Lynch has been added to the rater group. And if James were interested in getting the input from somebody who wasn't an employee, he would select the Add External Raters, simply put in the name of the individual. So let's add me to the rater list and put in my email address. And let's have me as a peer. Now, if we're going to, if the organization wants to include external raters, that fact highlights that one of the other capabilities of the TalentQuest system is you have lots of flexibility around what those rater groups are called and how many of them you have. So if we were going to get ratings from external raters, we would probably have a rater group called customers, or suppliers, or some other group of people who would have interacted with James on the job that were not employees of the company. For our purposes here, let's just add this external rater as a peer. So that's sort of step one of the 360-degree feedback process, giving the subject an opportunity to select who their raters ought to be. When he has made all his selections, he hits submit. And when the selections are submitted, the system allows the company to configure multiple ways that the raters can be approved. They can be approved by the administrator of the 360, so typically somebody in human resources, or alternatively they can be approved by the employee's manager. And in this case, Sandra Carey, who is one of James's direct reports, she's also been given the opportunity to receive a 360. She selected her raters, and we see that James has a task called Approve Raters. And if I select Sandra Carey's name, we'll see that the information who she suggested as who her raters ought to be is presented to James for approval. And James has a couple of options here. He can either approve the raters as they were submitted. He can reject the raters and send it back to the employee. He can accompany that send back. You see that he can send an email to Sandra Carey, probably in advance of rejecting it, giving her some explanation as to why he rejected it so that she could make changes. Or alternatively, he has the opportunity to add raters himself. So he can, using the same, that this interface should look familiar. It's the same interface that is used to select raters. So once that learning has occurred, that the visual experience is the same for approving raters. So he can add additional raters, add external raters. He can choose to delete some of the ones that they were selected, or again, he can send it back to Sandra Carey for her to do those things. But for our demo at this time, let's submit as approved. So that's step one of or the beginnings of a 360 feedback process. That's selecting the raters, getting the raters approved by someone, and then once the raters are approved, then the system automatically knows to approach or send emails to the people who've been asked to provide ratings. It sends them an email inviting them to engage. So James, at one point, would have received an email asking him to respond to the following 360s. So one for John Duke, one for Sandra Carey, his own self-assessment. And we know it's his own because it says his role in this particular 360 is to be the subject, but on all the others, these are people that work for him, so he's their manager. And if if an individual within the TalentQuest system, if an individual is asked to respond to multiple 360s and they are all based on the same survey, which they are here, they're all being based on the Verum Executive Survey, then we offer the wonderful capability of selecting multiple 360s and responding to them all simultaneously. From an efficiencies perspective, this is outstanding. It allows an individual to examine and think about people as a group and maybe do some differential rating within that group. And it looks like because James is the subject of this one, it's not going to let him, he can't select this one to be done simultaneously. It has the smarts, which apparently I didn't in explaining it, that it not only has to be the same template, but it has to be, you have to be doing it in the same role. So he can respond to all 4 of his direct reports 360s simultaneously. So I've highlighted those, and now I'm going to say perform tasks. And it's going to bring forth an interface which shows me the 4 people that I'm going to respond to. The different sections of the survey are identified at the top of this page with tabs. So I can choose to proceed through the survey 1 page at a time using the next button that appears at the top and bottom of every page, or I can go directly to the section that I want to go to. And this visual cue, you see that the check mark next to mindset is partially completed. That's telling me that I've already submitted some responses in this area. In teamwork, where the checkbox is not colored at all, it's telling me that I've not provided any input in these areas yet. So if I go to mindset, it's going to present the behaviors that I'm going to be rating against, and you'll see that it will stack a rating opportunity for each of the 4 people. So you'll remember that I'm responding to John Duke, Sandra Carey, Daniel Freeds, and Stephanie Archers simultaneously. So I'm going to rate them all on this first behavior of articulates the critical issues confronting the business. So I can suggest that in this case John Duke is a 4. And it's telling me that with this sign that I've not provided the rating yet. So I'll say occasionally and moderately. And I can proceed through and provide all the responses. You see that we can change the rating scale or the descriptors if necessary. I can provide supporting comments by behavior, or in this case, it's set up to be comments by competency. And I can choose to have a business rule that if under certain circumstances, not every time, but if the rating is either falls below a certain value or above a certain value, that comments will be required. So as you might imagine, the individual will proceed through this, provide all of their ratings, and then submit it. And once all ratings have been submitted, it will generate the final report that we started out looking at. And in the meantime, the system automatically will monitor progress. If a deadline is approaching, like if the individuals had been given a deadline of the 15th of the month to provide the ratings, and the 12th of the month has arrived, the system can be configured that starting from 3 days before the due date, the system should automatically generate email reminders to anybody who hasn't yet responded. And as soon as they've responded, the emails to that individual will stop. So there we've taken it from the beginning of nominating raters, having raters approved, responding to the 360, which is what we're doing now, and then finally generating the report. And using what will happen behind the scenes away from the technology is that report will then be reviewed by the individual and likely their manager or a coach, and developmental priorities can be established.
Thank you, John. And if you have any additional questions on TalentQuest and or our 360-degree feedback surveys, please email us at info@talentquest.com. Thanks so much.